Frank Jackson's knowledge argument in favor of property dualism, which states that while the world is only made up of physical substance, both physical and mental properties still exist, succeeds in debunking physicalism, which claims the world only consists of physical properties, by arguing that one's subjective experience is integral in obtaining knowledge. Property dualists believe that the mental and physical are two separate things with separate properties, while physicalists hold that experience is just synapses firing in the brain. So, to the latter, if experiences are purely physical, then humans are purely physical beings. However, physicalism doesn't account for phenomenal properties, such as one's subjective experience. This is a serious flaw to the theory that Jackson attacks. The knowledge argument, herein referred to as the Mary argument, concludes that physicalism is false because one's subjective experience includes properties other than the physical, and this is not addressed in the physicalist's doctrine. To describe the thought experiment briefly, Mary has been locked in a monochromatic room for a time, but knows all the physical information concerning color, such as wavelengths, psychology, etc. One day, she is released from the room into the real world, and is subjected to the experience of color. The question Jackson poses, does she learn anything new upon her release? To him, it seems apparent that Mary would learn how to see color differently, by experiencing the actual colors, and in that experience would learn something new about perception. If Mary indeed learns something new upon her release, then her purely physical knowledge, prior to her release, was incomplete and physicalism must be false. Physicalists believe that the physical properties Mary knows about color is all she would need to experience color, and therefore hold that she would not learn anything new upon her release. Jackson's stance is that she would experience what it's like to actually see color for herself. One's subjective experience of seeing blue differs from any other. Sure, two people can be looking at the same color blue, but based on their experiences, would perceive what they see differently. For example, an artist could describe blue based on its pigment and shading, and when they would use the color in their work, while a photographer could describe blue based on contrast and filters, and when that color works best in a photo. They can agree, and even relate with one another, but their experience of the color is different. Jackson's claim is that there is more information Mary does not have in the room, primarily the experience of seeing actual color, so not all information is physical. Therefore, physicalism is false because it does not account for the abstract subjective experience of what it's like to actually see and experience color. In Jackson's own essay, Epiphenomenal Qualia, he introduces a fellow philosopher, Paul Churchland, who challenges his experiment. Churchland offers his own simplified version of Jackson's argument, which includes two premises with two different forms of knowledge. Knowledge by description, in other words, Mary learning all the physical properties of color, and knowledge by acquaintance, Mary learning color based on exposure, for example. It is no mistake that Churchland has included two different forms of knowledge. However, he makes a simple mistake in his first premise that invalidates his argument. In his convenient version, premise 1 reads, Mary knows everything there is to know about brain states and their properties. Indeed, if Jackson's original premise had stated that Mary knows everything, this objection would be an accurate one. However, Jackson states in his original argument that her knowledge is based on physical information pertaining to human color vision, not brain states or their properties. It is Jackson's precise argument that Mary does not know everything about the brain and its properties prior to her release, because she doesn't have the experience needed in order to know them. She only understands what she's been given, all the physical properties of color. Another objection comes from philosopher Evan Thompson. He claims that locking Mary in a monochromatic room would not prevent her from having color experiences. A simple question that requires a little imagination can be asked to counter Thompson's objection. What if Mary were colorblind from birth? Jackson could simply state that Mary is among the rare colorblind people who cannot see color at all. Alternatively, he could say she is colorblind up until the point she is released, and then her full color vision is restored by a medical procedure, without penalizing his argument. Thompson also claims that there is no account of whether colorblind people can have mental color experiences. Accounted for or not, Jackson could still hold his view by saying that those experiences would be inaccurate, because she would not be able to see the correct color. Let's say that the surgery before her release would restore perfect color vision. Therefore, she would still experience something new upon being let out of the room by seeing correct colors for the first time. The ability hypothesis, defended notably by philosophers David Lewis and Lawrence Nemirau, asserts that Mary would not learn anything new upon her release, but would gain a set of abilities such as imagining and recognizing colors based on their properties. Nemirau defends this hypothesis, claiming that knowing what an experience is like is the same as knowing how to imagine having the experience. Supporters of Jackson deny this, saying that having an ability or imagination is not necessary or sufficient when it comes to experiencing something. Imagining an experience and the actual experience are two different concepts, which upholds the property dualist's claim. The problem of other minds will always be a factor in philosophy of mind, but Jackson goes about bringing it up in a subtle form in the Mary argument by suggesting that physicalism cannot account for subjective experience. Indeed, it seems impossible to refute that even with every physical fact there is to know, there is still something to learn from actively going out into the world and being a part of it. For example, a rainy day is dreary and miserable to some, but others relish such days and call them tranquil. Mary could not know how she felt about those days because she has been locked in a room and has never experienced weather. Until her release, we can assume she only knew about the physical properties of rain and weather, how it could physically and psychologically affect a person and other people's experiences with rain. But she could never know what her feelings and experience would be until she encountered it herself. How can experience, which varies from person to person, be labeled as physical? Say one goes through a traumatic event unique to them. There is no way to relate to them. Sure, one can appreciate what another has gone through, but they can never understand it if they have not gone through said trauma themselves. Even then, the experience would still be subjective and therefore different. This anomaly suggests there is something more to experience than synapses firing in the brain. According to Jackson's Mary argument, knowledge is incomplete until subjective experience is accounted for. Without that, one can only imagine what something is like or take someone else's word for truth. This doesn't seem sufficient, as hearing about someone's trip to Niagara Falls and how beautiful it is not the same thing as going on the trip and seeing the beauty for oneself. A picture or story does not capture the majesty of such a place. The personal experience must be had in order to fully understand. If Mary has never been able to see color for herself, seeing the code for green on a computer screen would not send the same messages to the brain as seeing a lush green field on a nice day. The experience would be different. It's like trying to capture a sunset. The photo is never as good as actually seeing it in person. As mentioned, Mary could learn psychological facts about color and its relationship to people, such as blue often being related to sadness or red as angry, but she would not know, without seeing the color, how it would make her feel. Blue could make her happy. If we were strict of our own streams of consciousness and our experiences, we would just be walking shells of skin and muscles devoid of personalities. It would be like living in a world of conformity where humans have been replaced by robots. Without the subjective experience, humans are incomplete.